AN95G welcomes you to our postmortem for our game Anti-Gravity. We hope you enjoy.
Anti-Gravity is a side-scrolling shooter/puzzle platforming game. The core mechanic is the right mouse click black hole projectile shot, which when shot at a wall or other solid object will propel the player towards that location. The player is also given various other projectile shots, which were used by the left mouse click. There is a red projectile which burns objects, a yellow projectile which shoots extremely fast, a blue projectile that the player guides, and as well as a combination of all of these other projectiles. To acquire these projectiles, the player must first make their way through puzzles and past enemies and turrets to collect the shards for its respective projectile. Anti-Gravity turned out to be a completely different game than we originally envisioned when entering Final Project, literally. It's a completely different game than we had originally thought up. We had to change it though due to time constraints, and we had also lost a member to our team. Now, this is definitely not a bad thing. While we had some pretty cool ideas for our original concept, Writer's Block, we were all very excited about creating Anti-Gravity instead because we were all pretty much all on board and we all seemed much more passionate about it overall. Now, there's no doubt in our minds that communication was absolutely key when creating this game for AN95. There was no point in time where any team member couldn't be reached if absolutely needed to be. Now, we all shared contact information with each other, including text and email, and we used it pretty consistently. We really did try to communicate using our Skype. Now, Skype was huge for us, and without a doubt, probably the best communication tool we had. We had chats specifically dedicated to the team, and it was available to anyone 24/7.
We made sure to secure our weekly meetings with the professors as early as possible. Having these meetings and receiving our feedback on the game on Mondays gave us an extra day to start work on the next build. In addition to that, we would have an after-meeting meeting on Monday nights after receiving our feedback to discuss what needed to be tackled that week by each member. These meetings allowed us to easily organize and prioritize the work for the upcoming week.
When it came to organization, we had a few hiccups here or there within Perforce, but overall, Perforce was our saving grace when it came to building the game. Now, for each level that we all had individual sub-levels where we could add our work to. Now, this was great at being able to effectively understand the organization of all these levels, but it was also even better at letting us know who was working on what, who made what changes, and it went a lot further towards making things a lot smoother. And thanks to Shaun and Aaron, we also had our tasks laid out for us, so we knew exactly who needed to do what.
Hi there, in this section we're going to talk about what didn't work. First and foremost, our initial game design did not work. In RAM, we had all these big dreams of this super awesome game called Writer's Block. Well, Writer's Block didn't turn out to be so awesome. We were warned several times that we needed to scale back the design and kind of stay within scope. And while we sincerely thought at the time we were doing that, to put it bluntly, we weren't. Writer's Block was a big project to take on with 5 people, but we insisted that we can do it. Looking back, we all agree that it wasn't even possible to do, and when we lost a member, it made it even more impossible to do, which really put the nail in the coffin for this initial game. And this brings us to our next big thing that went wrong.
Losing a member of the team was a huge setback for AN95 games. We were extremely crunched on time to come up with a new game and flesh out all the major mechanics. Add that on top of all of us having full-time jobs, as many students do, issues with getting the builds completed without any errors, and being in 3 different time zones, and it felt like time was working against us. In the end, we had to cut a lot of meat off of the side of our final product because we just didn't have the time to dedicate to making 10 to 15 levels. We're definitely pleased with the way that Anti-Gravity turned out, but there was a lot of stressful moments that had to be worked through to get here.
So stress management was not something that we handled very well in the beginning of our project here. Our personalities were all new to each other. Only 2 members had actually worked together previously, so it took us a little time to kind of learn each other's quirks and behaviors. You know, as you guys know, the time invested in this project is extremely extensive, and with time constraints on the project and time constraints at work, you know, stress levels, they run extremely high, and with those stress levels, you always end up with team members that are going to be butting heads and not agreeing on something, and maybe spark some unwanted or unnecessary feelings. You know, and with that being said, one of the things that we kind of struggled with at the very beginning was being able to not take things personally and realize that every constructive comment was meant to help the team progress as a whole. You know, by the time Project 3 rolled around, we learned a lot about each other and how everybody kind of, you know, handled different situations and just different stresses. And even though we were still in disagreement on some things, we learned how to disagree constructively, which I think was a huge learning experience, which turned one of our biggest problems into one of our strongest strengths.
Although it's hard to properly list here, we have learned many new skills through our personal research, trial, and error. Here's a few I could think of: modifying the pawn's attributes on the fly, successfully building and packaging the custom games, merging code from one source to another, general use scripting, lots of use scripting. A lot of my increased use scripting abilities need to be attributed to the great assistance I received from Andy Phillips. That guy's a genius. And finally, teamwork. Resolving personal issues is critically important to getting a project from start to completion.
I know that personally, one of the biggest things that I took away from Final Project and the overall experience itself was the understanding of how UDK really works. Yeah, it's a huge editor, a huge engine, and it's just unbelievable some of the things you can do. I know that first of all, I really understood how to generate new and altered assets, basically altering assets themselves, such as the colors and the appearance, like within the materials, the textures, static meshes, skeletal meshes, in the editors, and how to create custom particles within Cascade. I know that between the material editor and Cascade itself, I had really picked up a lot of information and a lot of knowledge I never had before. Secondly, something I came out with was achieving a whole new grasp on Matinee's system and its fine processes. I mean, Matinee is amazing. Some of the things that you can do with it to just really visually bring out a game and really add to the animation of it. Thirdly, using UDK and the actions within the levels, the functionality, they work just as well as custom use scripts. I know that I don't have a broad knowledge of code, so using a high-level visual scripting system like Kismet really allowed me to get in there and make some things look pretty cool within the levels. Fourth, that came up for me was how to construct a properly functioning prefab, how to unconnect that prefab so that I can make a few tweaks to the prefab itself, and I can create a new one from tweaking it. So you add a few things, take a few things away here or there, and you pretty much have close to the same thing, and you can just make a bunch of different prefabs that way. Fifth, for me on the list was understanding how a true puzzle and design within the level can have an effect on the overall game's design. This was something that you really pick up when you're getting the game going and putting it together. And lastly, finally, what I really took away was how quickly differences and difficulties can change, like the blowing of the wind, when stuff really goes crazy. This brings up the importance of the team's ability to think on the fly and troubleshoot issues while trying to think inside and outside of the box, This was very true when it came to the game's design, and the personal levels within our team.
The biggest thing that I took away from Final Project was the overall experience of designing a game. I primarily focused on level design, but with the help of my teammates I dabbled a bit with UScript, which helped me learn more about scripting. In regards to level design, I learned that it's the small stuff that matters. Being able to light a torch in a corner may seem insignificant, but it adds to the overall experience of the game. I learned even more about the importance of teamwork and healthy communication. A team that communicates well can move mountains.
Hey, this is Shaun again. I'm going to talk about what I learned throughout our project here. I was responsible for doing the majority of the Scaleform work, and Scaleform was a major part of our game. We use Scaleform to handle our menus, our pop-ups, our notifications, and much more. When I first started learning Scaleform, I had no clue how difficult the learning curve would be. But with the help of my teammates and the help of our final project staff, I was able to obtain a vast working knowledge of the program. I went from knowing nothing about Flash and ActionScript to being able to script complex and interactive menus. It was really a fantastic learning experience for me. During the progression of this game design, it also took my knowledge of Kismet to a whole new level. My working knowledge of Kismet was increased by at least tenfold. Now I'm able to create real-time logic checks throughout Kismet. And do a bunch of other different advanced techniques utilizing Kismet. Unreal Script is another extremely valuable skill set that I learned over the course of this project. I now feel comfortable manipulating scripts, creating my own variations of scripts. And all in all, this experience was an extremely valuable and rewarding experience. However, I can be honest with you, I really do look forward to getting some sleep.
On behalf of AN95G, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out and seeing the presentation with us. We have some special thanks for John Rake and Benjamin Bradley for the awesome music they provided for us, and Andy Phillips and Sean Austin for the assistance in programming and getting the mechanics working as intended. Also, special thanks to Fernando, Ricardo, and Juan for their assistance as teachers, Justin Gallo, Andrew O'Malley, DJ, and anyone else who provided assistance to us. You know who you are. We look forward to your questions.